Okay, so now let's dig through a little bit further. We've obviously started to look at the basics. We've had the introduction. In some ways, we've started to talk about some of the basic considerations, particularly around what our media requirements are and the appropriate vehicles. Now what we need to do is we need to start getting a little bit further down into those and keep on drilling and starting to look at them in a fair bit more detail. So what we need to do now is we need to start to define what our media requirements are. And what we're looking at there is we're really doing the basics of going back and defining, who is our audience and developing a good customer profile. So know exactly who we're talking to, whether it's, basically our target demographic. We're analysing the product market factors to determine the reach and frequency requirements. So how far do we need to go? Like who do we need to contact and how often are we going to need to contact them? We're going to start thinking about the creative requirements of the advertising message. So what needs to go into it and what needs to be built, established or developed in order to develop that message further. We're going to start thinking about any merchandising requirements that we have. Okay, so how do we create merchandise? And in very simple terms, we look at sporting teams. Everyone wants to buy the sports jumper. Okay, that's merchandising 101 and the sort of stuff that you'd see normally. Okay, just to get into the headspace of what we're talking about there. We need to think about, well, what are the legal or the ethical or the voluntary constraints? So what can't we say? What can we say? What are we permitted to talk about? And also, what are we going to say our own edges of that are as well? Not just push it to the edge of the law. We might find, where's our voluntary constraint? Where do we want to keep these conversations? We need to also do, let's just say, a last confirmation of the media budget and think about the vehicles that we're going to use. So what processes, what tools, and what platforms are we going to engage? Okay, so that's really what we did there. So the first thing we start to talk about then is we're going to develop back down into what is the target audience. Okay, we're going to have that longer conversation again now and start to dig through what it is. So once again, we need to say, is it business to business or are we B2C, so business to consumer, right? So we're selling to the people we want. And we're starting to think about, when we start to dig into that, particularly if we're looking at dealing with people, or actually either, we still need to know about, what are the characteristics? What are the demographics? What do we know about these people? How big are they? How old are they? Where are they, etc. We start to talk about the geographic location. So I'm looking for people of the age of 10 to 15 who live in Granville or some suburb or that particular area. I need to think about the psychographic and behavioural as well. So I'm looking for those people between this age and this age that live in that area who all like soccer. Okay, so we're starting to get a bit of a target audience down there. We start to talk about their attitude and trends. Okay, so what are their attitudes and trends? Okay, what do they think? What do they believe? What do they talk about? What's hip with the kids at the moment? Okay, what are they all doing? That becomes a good conversation there as well, okay? Do they have a particular attitude? Do they have a particular, mentality towards things? We need to think about what are the social and cultural needs, or even subcultural needs if you really want to go that far, okay? But we need to think about, what's happening in their social environment, okay? So what are the big things there that we can either tap into or that we need to be aware of? Okay, we also start to think about their value set. So what is it that they value? What are they interested in? Okay, what do they hold true and what do they hold dear? Are there particular beliefs, customs or traditions that they sort of hold as, what they represent? We hate to use a stereotype, but the true blue Aussie who believes in mateship or whatever, we've got all those sort of things there. How are they going to connect with that and where that's going to go? Because obviously that starts to shape the sort of message that you're going to put out. Because if you want to be able to relate to these people, you need to be able to communicate in a way that's relevant to them. Otherwise they go, this doesn't seem to have anything to do with me, and so I'm not going to buy in or buy your product or whatever. And then lastly, we need to think about what are their media consumption. Okay, media consumption, and as well as the usage pattern that they're going to undertake. Okay, in other words, where do they get their information from? If I'm starting to think about, my grandmother, she's probably not going to be jumping on board with the latest tweets and latest Instagram photos. However, if you've got AM radio station, in the middle of the day, she's probably listening to a lot of AM radio in the middle of the day and a lot of talkback type stuff. So if I want to sell something to her or be in front of her as an audience for my product, then I probably need to advertise on AM radio at lunchtime when she's barely listening away. Selling a whole bunch of old people a bunch of things on social media may or may not work. I need to really think about what's she doing, where is she, what is her patterns, how do I get in front of that, what are the values that she holds dear, so what is she interested in hearing about, and start to think about her social and cultural attitudes, her trends, etc. So it really is about understanding who these people are, what are the demographics you're involved in, what are the geographics you're involved in, but really starting to think about what are the key parts of this that allow me to relate to them and be able to communicate with them in a language and manner and a style that they're going to understand and happily relate to. So if I don't have relevance, and that becomes a problem.